founder and chairperson of the Investigation Against Genocide. I'm here today to support the efforts to improve the curriculum on genocide and increase efforts to teach against genocide in Massachusetts. I want to highlight three factors in support of special consideration and attention to teaching about genocide. First, we now know that genocide and mass atrocities are not merely historical problems. Though we all may have said never again, we have seen genocides again and again throughout the 20th century. And in the 21st century, the first genocide of the 21st century is in Darfur, Sudan, and it shocked and galvanized the American public, resulting in a sustained outcry from millions of Americans. The U.S. State Department and two presidents recognized the genocide as genocide in Darfur, and that's the first time in history that a genocide was formally recognized while it was underway. Second, genocide is now recognized as a critical issue for U.S. national security. Starting in 2007, Madeleine Albright and William Cohen led a bipartisan blue-ribbon genocide prevention task force. They published their report in December of 2008, and you may borrow my copy if you like, although it's available on the web. And they identified genocide prevention as a national priority, and they made policy recommendations to enhance the capacity of the U.S. government to respond to emerging threats of genocide and mass atrocities. Their work has received broad-based support, as evidenced in December 2010, when the U.S. Senate unanimously passed Senate Concurrent Resolution 71, quote, recognizing the U.S. national interest in helping to prevent and mitigate acts of genocide and other mass atrocities against civilians, and supporting and encouraging efforts to develop a whole-of-government approach to prevent and mitigate such acts. Third, and most important, studying genocide can be an important and powerful opportunity to energize students for positive civic engagement. Today, you've gotten just a hint of how big and powerful that energy may become. The Genocide Prevention Task Force report included two recommendations that apply to the Genocide Education Bill under consideration today. One recommendation was to focus on developing civil society, and that applies domestically and internationally. Quote, organizations engaged in public education and advocacy for rights and help not only protect individual rights, but also promote a culture of lawful gunplay. The second recommendation was aimed squarely at America. Quote, the American people should build a permanent constituency for the prevention of genocide and mass atrocities. The report noted, and I quote again, the striking level of public engagement in the Darfur crisis suggests enormous untapped potential for genocide prevention in non-governmental and civil society organizations around the world. Well, Sudan activists and you here in this room, from just your observations today, the students from Harwich know that much of the public engagement on Darfur was from young people, college students and high school students, energized to work for a social cause that really mattered to them, who believed that their political activity could make a difference. Well, what a striking civic lesson they learned. What a contrast between their activism and many of their peers who are cynics or who simply have no interest in public affairs. And looking ahead, how many students touched by Darfur activism in organizing efforts are inspired to invest time and energy in Sudan or elsewhere in Africa or in public service? Who can say how great a seismic shift will result in this investment of youth and talent? The example of Darfur gives a hint of the tremendous potential for students, for society, and for our national interest in having a coherent program in genocide education. I hope you're successful in instituting effective genocide education as part of the curriculum in Massachusetts.
I have one question. The legislature talks about a minimum of 2 genocides be taught. Could you share with us some of your thoughts about what the qualification or determination of genocide should be? Should we be using a UN standard or a State Department? Some thoughts about where these things are from?
Yes, thank you. There is broad-based scholarship in the area of genocide. You will hear testimony from an international genocide scholar shortly. So I'll leave it to her to discuss this more. But this is not a question of some people have certain ideas, other people have other ideas. The international societies of genocide scholars have done very deep work in this area, and there's very broad agreement about which are genocides. So it isn't like it was a big political problem. They know that there are problems in recognizing genocide because the first thing that happens is to deny the genocide. So there's always these forces at work that say, oh, no, 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 not that. When Madeleine Albright and William Cohen led their bipartisan team to generate this report of policy recommendations, what they emphasized was prevention and how to get prevention. And part of prevention is having a populace, an educated populace, who are ready to scream at the hints. In other words, if we have to wait for mass atrocities and widespread crimes against humanity to be universally recognized as genocide, how many people are dead? We don't have to wait. It's enough to use the warning signals and to act then, and that's what civil society can do. So the goal of discussing older historic versions of genocide should be readying us to be making points to be preventing what may happen in the future. And lastly, the thing that I think is very important is that in the study of genocide, if you're talking about the Armenian genocide, if you only dealt with it as a footnote to the breakup of the Ottoman Empire, you may learn little. If you dealt with the Holocaust as a footnote to the rise of Nazism in World War II, you may learn little. On the other hand, if you deal with the range of genocides as a problem that befits attention, that instead of yet one more maybe boring historical detail, you have an engaging and terrible dimension of human behavior that will motivate students and generate civic action. And I encourage that kind of comprehensive, coherent view of teaching genocide to take place. If that happens, it doesn't matter if your list is perfect or imperfect, as long as you're recognizing that it's happening time and time again, and the common things and how to see it before it gets.
Further questions? Could you say again the name of the international organization of scholars on this issue that you would recommend as an authority on what is genocide?
Helen Klein, who is in our audience today and will be speaking, is a representative of the International Society of Genocide. An expert in this area.